What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and Jake College Football Show. Lately, we've been getting into my biggest questions for each and every Power 4 team. This week was the Big 12, our final Power 4 conference. Yes, I will be putting out an episode for Washington State, Oregon State, and Notre Dame. They will get their own separate episode. But yeah, today is the Big 12. And then moving forward, we've got media days coming up shortly, conference previews, win totals, season predictions, playoff predictions. And then it's the start of the season. We are so close. I'm so excited. Um, Real football is right around the corner. Um, so yeah, let's get right into it. Let's have a good wake and bake sesh and talk some Big 12. Alrighty, per usual, alphabetical order, just going to work our way through. So we'll start with Arizona. Who is Noah Fafita without T. McMillan? It felt like last year, anytime they went to throw the ball, it was McMillan or bust. Granted, offensive line wasn't great. That's beside the point. If McMillan wasn't open, it felt like it was kind of almost like panic mode. Um, and if you look at the stats too, it kind of backs it up. One of every three completions was to McMillan. 45% of Fafita's passing yards went to McMillan, and of his 18 touchdowns, 8 of them were McMillan. He was basically 50% of that passing game just to one receiver. It was so night and day between him and the next leading receiver in both receptions, yards, touch, everything. It was just McMillan or bust. It really was. So I guess maybe a better question is, how does Fafita progress as a passer now that he doesn't have McMillan to just rely on, to fall back on? That's his scapegoat, his safety net. It'll be interesting to see because McMillan after not McMillan, sorry, Fafita, going into last season had a lot of hype, um, and then just kind of fell flat on his face. Does he take another step forward, or does he continue what he did last year? Arizona State. Cam Scadaboo. That's really the biggest question. How do you replace Cam Scadaboo? I want to say, like, can Arizona State win the Big 12, make it back to the playoffs? But really, Cam Scadaboo, how do you replace him? Because not only was he your leading rusher by a long shot, I might add, um, he was also your second leading receiver. It was he was the most important person on that offense. Some people are going to argue Sam Levitt. Some people are going to argue Tyson. I'm sorry, it was Cam Scadaboo, hands down, without a doubt. Leading rusher, second leading receiver, absolutely took games over and won games for you. Um, Look at the Texas game. He just went. Cam Scadaboo was the MVP of that offense. He was that offense last year. So that being said, I guess a backup question for Arizona State: can Sam Levitt take that next step? Because he's not going to have Cam Scadaboo to fall back on. Um, it'll be interesting to see. I think Arizona State's still going to have a good team because they do return so many of their starters. Basically, the whole offensive line, leading receiver, your tight end that from last year, Mateer, I believe. You return a lot on defense, which that defense was already pretty decent. Arizona State's going to have a good year. It's just replacing Cam Scadaboo is impossible. So you need other players to take that next step if you're going to want to replace him. Baylor. Feels weird to be saying this about a Baylor team, especially with Dave Aranda as the head coach. Actually, because Dave Aranda is the head coach. But can the defense be better? Because offense was good. Offense was pretty good last year. Very good. Once they figured out the quarterback situation, offense was good. And they have 8 returners on that good offense from last year. So I expect the offense to be good. But the defense was pretty mediocre, which is kind of crazy to say for a Dave Aranda team because he's been known to have good defenses. Um, I do expect him to turn it around defensively this year with his team. I believe he's doing play calling duties for the second year in a row, and maybe that's the issue is because he's the head coach now. He shouldn't be doing play calling, and maybe that's why they took a step back. I don't know. When the head coach is so focused on one thing, it's hard. I don't like when coaches are always the play callers. I go back and forth on that. But it's a second year calling the defense for his own team. We will see how that turns out for him. But I do expect him to turn it around. BYU. Not the question I had originally, but news coming out lately of Jake Retzlaff being accused of some terrible things. Then him coming out and saying that he's not only innocent, but it was consensual, which then goes against BYU's honor code. So then he's suspended from the team, but then he's got this, which ended up getting dismissed, but this suit against him. He has now entered the transfer portal. Jake Retzlaff is not going to be the quarterback this year. So what does the quarterback position look like for BYU? Uh, and honestly, when you look at the options, not a lot. You've got McKay Hillstead, redshirt sophomore, transfer from Utah State, has not played since 2023, did not play at all last year, obviously because of Retzlaff. Um, you got Trayson Bourget from Western Michigan, I believe, redshirt junior, and then you got Bear Bachmeyer, who is a true freshman, enrolled or signed with Stanford, transferred to BYU. Those are your three quarterbacks that you got to pick between now. Um, Mackay has 4 starts at Utah State as a redshirt sophomore now. So I mean, he has started before, but it was at Utah State. Uh, Bourget, I know he has started. I don't know how many games, but he's played in like 10 games over a few years at Western Michigan. But again, Western Michigan, not BYU. Neither quarterback really played last year at all. And then you got the true freshman. It's not. It's not a great situation for BYU. Let's just put it that way. Um, on the bright side, I guess nobody really knew who Jake Retzlaff was last year, and then they win 11-2 and had a great season. So maybe it's gonna be the same thing this year, where we got 3 unknown quarterbacks. Nobody really knows anything about them, and then all of a sudden they fall out, and BYU goes 11-2, 10-2, whatever this year again, and we all look silly. Cincinnati. Can the defensive line stay healthy this year? Um, a lot of injuries on the defensive line last year. It was a problem. Not the greatest at getting after the quarterback. But you got a bunch of guys returning from injury this season. They're going into the start of the season healthy. I think the D line will be improved. I don't think we're gonna, fingers crossed that there's no injuries. But as long as there's no injuries, that defense line should be much improved this year. Then we got Colorado. I've got a lot of questions about Colorado. What does that offense look like without Shadur and Travis Hunter? What's the team, the defense, and the offense look like without a Heisman winner? Um, Now that Shiloh and Shadur are gone, is Dion going to be hated as much as he's been the last couple years, or did everybody just hate his kids that much? Um, but I guess the biggest question for them would be, it's kind of a two-parter. Can the run game be better? Slash, is the offensive line going to be improved? And honestly, that's tough to say, because they were the worst rushing team in the country last year, and there's a few reasons behind that. One, they didn't like to run the ball because trying to show off Shadur, try to get him drafted. But at the same time, even if they wanted to run it, it was so bad. Offensive line has been an issue at Colorado since Dion took over, and I think it's going to be an issue again this year. You hate to see this with any team. They have 9 offensive linemen that they brought in from the transfer portal this year. 9. That's a lot. And that's usually not a good sign. I'll say this. Do I think they're going to get more than 65 yards a game on the ground this year? Yes, I do. So I guess technically, sure, it is going to be improved. But I still don't think that run game is going to be good. I think it's going to be another rough year for that Colorado offensive line. Houston. This might be crazy. Might not be. Maybe you'll all be like, no, duh, dude. Can Houston make a bowl game? When you look at their schedule, there are 6 potential wins there for Houston. Um, Offense has got to be better, though. I will say that. It was their defense was pretty good this year or last year, I should say. But that offense was so bad. They brought in Connor Wegman. They brought in a handful of linemen. Brought in Tanner Koziel. I believe he transferred to Wisconsin and then left them again, like right away to then go to Houston. Brought in a few skill position players. I mean, it's got to be improved. There's no way it's not. It's, I guess, the real question is, do you believe in Connor Wegman? Because if you do, this offense is going to be significantly better. If you don't, you probably think it's going to be much of the same as last year. If you're on the fence about Connor Wegman, I think it'll be improved. It might not be great, but I think it's a step in the right direction that that Houston needs to potentially make a bowl game or be in the hunt for a bowl game and have high hopes going into next year. Iowa State. How do you replace two NFL wide receivers? Uh, Noel and Higgins combined for over 2,300 yards, 160 plus receptions, and 17 touchdowns. That's over 60% of Rocco Beck's passing yards, completions, and touchdowns, just to those two guys. Um, they brought in a couple guys from the portal to replace those two, but let's be honest, you're not going to replace them. And neither of these guys that they're bringing in have the production at any point in their career that Noel and Higgins had. Um, I expect this to be, and I think this is probably what you expect most of the time with an Iowa State team. I expect this to be a run first team this year. They returned their top three rushers from last year. Um, Run first for sure, because you're not going to replace those two receivers. It's just impossible. We may even see Rocco Beck's numbers go down this year, and it's not going to be because he's uh, gotten worse or plateaued or anything like that. But when you have two NFL receivers and then they're gone, your numbers are probably going to go down a little bit. Then we got Kansas. Can they avoid the slow start that they had last year? Uh, it was tough to watch. Jalen Daniels in that offense just took them a while to get going. Started the season 1-5, had 5 losses in a row, uh, and all of those were one-score losses. Just absolutely brutal way to start the season. Um, but once they did start to get rolling, started knocking off every team that was in the talk for winning the Big 12. Just boom, 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 just started knocking them all off. It was fantastic. Ended up winning 4 of the final 6. Missed out on a bowl game, but it was a good end to the season. Let's just put it that way, because it was could only be better from that beginning. Jeff Grimes is out after one season. Jalen Daniels is hopefully healthy this year. Fingers crossed. We know how it's been with him. Knee here, back there, a lot of back issues actually. Um, but there are a good amount of wins on the schedule, and they could honestly start the season 6-0, 5-1. Depends on if you believe in Mizzou or not. For Kansas State, can Avery Johnson take that next step as a quarterback? We all know what he can do with his legs. He's absolutely dynamic and can take over games. But last year, it was a very up and down season when it came to throwing the ball. And if you kind of look back at last season, it was basically anytime they played a good defense, he struggled to throw the ball. Um, if he can take that next step as a passer, we're going to see the same Kansas State that we saw last year, at least record wise, being in, if not better. If he does not progress as a passer this year or take that next step as a quarterback, we may see a little bit of a step back in Kansas State this year. Oklahoma State, what is this team even going to look like? And honestly, I think that's a good thing because absolutely brutal season last year, and they were had a bunch of returning starters, and there was a lot of people like, hey, I think that's a good thing, but I think most people were like, I don't know if that's a great thing. The team wasn't fantastic before that. Having that many returning starters may not be great, and it wasn't. It was not a good season. Um, New coordinators on both sides of the ball, 3 total returning starters, 0 on offense, 41 incoming transfers. It can't be worse. They're not going to go 0-9 in the Big 12 again. There's just no way. I believe. I'm not saying that Oklahoma State's going to be good this year. it just can't be worse than last year. Let's be honest. TCU, can that defense take the next step in their second year with Andy Avalos? Um, Offense was great last year, and looks to be great again this year. Defense was not great last year though. They did get a lot better as the year went on, which does make you think that they are going to be able to take that next step into this season. If you look at split the season in half, first half of the season they were allowing nearly 31 points a game. Um, Back half of the season, 22 points per game. Um, and they do return enough production on that side of the ball that I think we do see TCU's defense take the next step forward this year. Um, and kind of just relaying that straight into Texas Tech, can the defense be better this year? Uh, Texas Tech's defense was absolutely atrocious. They, unlike TCU, they did not show progress as the season went on. 121st in the country in points allowed, 126th in yards allowed. And if I had to pick one area specifically that defense needs to improve, it would be the pass defense. 132nd in pass yards allowed and 99th, tied for 99th in sacks. Brought in 5 defensive linemen, brought in 5 DBs. I believe they're going to be better this year because it's one of those cases where it can't be worse. I mean, in some areas, I guess it technically could, but there's just no way it's going to be worse. Um, but if the defense takes an, because again, it's going to be better, just how much better. If it's a lot better, watch out for Texas Tech to potentially win the Big 12 or make the playoff. It'll be interesting to see. The Big 12 is going to be so fun this year, as is not shocking to anybody. UCF, what's the second round of Scott Frost going to look like? I think it's going to be a tough first year. It's a whole new team. Gus Malzahn's gone. You're going to have new coach, new coordinators, and with any new coach comes a lot of transfers. They only have 4 returning starters, 44 left, 41 incoming. If I had to pick a strength, it's probably going to be the defense. I do think there's some potential at quarterback with Taven Jackson if he can win the job and live up to the hype that he had coming out. I'm not saying that he had crazy hype coming out of high school, but I believe he was a 4-star. Um, if he could live up to that hype and really ball out, UCF could have a pretty decent first year. But I think if I had to bet, it's going to be a long season for UCF. Alrighty, and we got Utah. What is life after Cam Rising like? But more importantly, what is that wide receiver room going to look like? Of their top 10 pass catchers from last year, all of them are gone, whether transfer, graduation, NFL, whatever. They returned one guy, 8 receptions, 122 yards. That's all you have coming back. Brought in 5 transfers. Nobody that makes you go, wow, this guy's going to ball out. It's going to be interesting to see what this wide receiver room looks like. And finally, we got West Virginia. And I have so many questions surrounding West Virginia. What's the second round of Rich Rod going to be like? Who's going to be the quarterback? How do you, with basically little to no receiving production returning, what's your wide receiver room going to look like? Completely brand new offensive line. Are they going to be good? Terrible pass rush last year. How do you make that better this year? But the biggest question, I think, for West Virginia is, can that secondary be improved? Now, when it comes to allowing a lot of pass yards, yes, good pass rush helps a lot, and West Virginia did not have a good pass rush, so I understand that. At the same time, that secondary still was not good. And it shows because they had 12 outgoing transfers from the secondary alone. They brought in 12 transfers for the secondary, which just goes to show you it was clearly a problem. They didn't want any of those guys back. They brought in a bunch of guys to compete for the starting jobs. Um, yeah, losing that many guys in the secondary in a secondary that was just terrible is not a bad thing. It's a good step for West Virginia. I can't imagine it's going to be worse than last year, so I'm sure we'll see some improvement from that secondary. But yeah, that was brutal to watch last year.